Well, good morning and welcome to the John Quintero Show on YouTube. San Diego Sports Talk. We're here Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, but I will tell you this Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, I'm going to take that day off and we'll rejoin you next Monday. But we got a show today. We'll have a show on Wednesday, and my guest on Wednesday is going to be San Diego CIF Commissioner Joe Hines as we get ready for Division One through four championships coming up this next weekend. I attended on Saturday night. I went out to Snapdragon Stadium, watched Cathedral Catholic take on the Lincoln Hornets, and quite frankly, Lincoln just way too much for Cathedral. They pounded them pretty good, 31-13, and really Lincoln showed their dominance. That's the second time they've beaten Cathedral Catholic. This past season, they won the first game 27-7. So really a dominating performance by the Hornets on Saturday night at Snapdragon Stadium. And I know a lot of people are kind of wondering about the playing conditions. Well, I went on the field prior to the game, talked to some of the officials, talked to a couple of the coaches, talked to a couple of the players, and well, I'll tell you what, the crew out there at Snapdragon, considering that field a little over 2 weeks ago was a complete disaster. It looked really good, and it looked like it played very, very well the other night. So they'll finish up the Aztec season on Saturday. That game's going to be, by the way, at 7:30 against Air Force Saturday night, and then of course the Holiday Bowl coming up on December 27th. But the field surface looked really, really good. But congratulations to David Dunn, the longtime coach at Lincoln, winning another Open Division championship. And congratulations to head coach Sean Doyle at Cathedral Catholic. Had a very, very good year. They finished at 10-3 on the year. Lincoln Hornets playing some great football, and we'll see how they do in a couple of weeks when they get going in the state championship. But they had a very, very convincing win the other night. Okay, we got a lot to get to today. If you're just tuning in for the very, very first time, folks, we would very much appreciate it if you'd subscribe to our program. We're working our way towards 3,000 subscribers. I had no idea what to expect when I started this venture, but we're getting close to 3,000. If you just take a second to subscribe, very much appreciate it. At the bottom of our YouTube page, there's comments. If you've got suggestions for the program or questions, always like to take a look at that. So make sure you write in those questions. You can also follow me on Facebook at John Quintero, and you can follow me on X at Coach Quintero 44. Okay, we're going to start with college football. We're going to start with San Diego State. I tuned into the game at 12:30 on Saturday, and I really expected the Aztecs to win this ball game, and it looked good early. They were up 13-0 with 2 minutes to go in the first half. They gave up a touchdown, and then all of a sudden, boom, another touchdown, which I still, to this day, after looking at the replay numerous times, I don't know how they overturned it. Originally, they ruled incomplete on the Utah State wide receiver. Then they, after a timeout by San Diego State, they reviewed it, and they gave Utah State a touchdown. And next thing you know, the Aztecs are down 14-13 at halftime. And that started a blitzkrieg of 41 straight points against the Aztecs. They were down 41-13, and then they scored with just seconds to go in the fourth quarter. It ended up 41-20. There's a lot of questions, and we need a lot of answers. And I want to go through it. First of all, this is the Aztecs' fifth straight loss. I thought they'd beat Utah State. I thought they'd beat New Mexico. I thought they would get bowl eligible. Not going to happen. Second straight year, the Aztecs are not going bowling. They're finishing up against Air Force on Saturday. All of a sudden, Air Force has kind of figured some things out. They're playing pretty good football right now. In fact, Air Force, they've had a couple of very convincing wins in the last few weeks. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But Sean Lewis, first-year head coach, lost a lot of players. Lost 42 players. When Brady Hoke decided to retire or get pushed out the door, I think that was more the case than he retired. I think he retired on the job, quite frankly, because he didn't do a very good job of recruiting. And Sean Lewis and his staff come in, and they're playing, from behind the eight ball. But, this team just has not made progress at all. And I realize they've got a lot of young guys that physically are not strong enough to hold up against good Division I football teams, and even against some of the bad Division I football teams. They're not physically strong enough right now. They got to get in the weight room. They got to get stronger, and they also got to go out and recruit better players. I mean, obviously, there's a reason why Coach Lewis is having to play a freshman quarterback, because the Aztecs didn't do a very good job of recruiting quarterbacks. They didn't really do it under Rocky Long, who I'm a big fan of. But people thought his offense was boring. He decided he didn't want to be here any longer, said he was going to retire, but he's still got a coaching job now. He's been coaching ever since he left San Diego State. I think there was a parting of the ways between Rocky Long and J.D. Wicker. And then J.D. Wicker, in my opinion, took the easy way out by giving Brady Hoke his job back that he gave up to Rocky Long when he took the job at Michigan. San Diego State football, folks, is in dire straits, and it's really at a crossroads. And it's really not Sean Lewis's fault. I'll be honest with you. I mean, could he be doing a better job? Yeah, he could be doing a better job as far as his team's not committing penalties. I mean, what I saw the other day was ridiculous. I mean, penalty. They've had so many penalties, I can't see straight. I mean, that's discipline. And I know Sean Lewis doesn't have a quote unquote offensive coordinator. He's got a run game coordinator, he's got a passing game coordinator, but he's really the offensive coordinator. And I've been thinking a lot about this since the game on Saturday. A lot about it, because I love Aztec football. I grew up in the Don Coryell era, Claude Gilbert. And then there were a lot of, so you'd have a good year here, a good year there. You had a nice run with Marshall Falk and Al Luganville. You know, Ted Tollner had a couple of 8-win teams, 8-3, couldn't get to a bowl game. And then you went through, Tom Kraft era was exciting football. They just didn't quite win. And I always wondered if Tom Kraft would have got that fifth year with Kevin O'Connell coming back and a lot of the things that they were dealing with, if he couldn't have might have been able to get that program going. But then they let him go and they bring in Chuck Long, which was a complete disaster. Complete disaster. And I'm not even going to begin to tell you what was going on in that program. I don't know if one hand knew what the other hand was doing. It was brutal. 3 years of football, a couple of losses to Cal Poly. I mean, you talk about watching some bad football. Chuck Long year was awful. And then, you get Brady Hoke in here for 2, one losing season, one winning year. He takes the job at Michigan, and then you have that great run of Rocky Long. Granted, it wasn't exciting football, but they won football games. And that's what you want to do. At the end of 60 minutes, you want to walk off with a W. Brady Hoke came in here a few years, nothing really. Last year, 4-8. Terrible. And Sean Lewis has to take this over. Then you got all the good players and some guys that probably should have never been recruited to San Diego State to begin with leave. So you lost some good guys and you lost some other guys who were taking up space, but you had to bring in 48 new players. And all those 48 new players, they got to get to know one another by first and last name. And then you got to put in an entirely new offense, an entirely new defense, and you're going to go through the growing pains. And that's where we're at right now. It's frustrating as hell. It's frustrating as hell. This is not Sean Lewis's fault. This is not Sean Lewis's fault. Now, next year at this time, if they're sitting at 3-8 and they're not going to be bowl eligible, then we're going to start having to take a good hard look at Sean Lewis and his staff and what they're doing and how they're doing it. How are they recruiting? How are they cutting down on undisciplined play? I mean, there's so many things to talk about. And, you go back to Saturday. And, the Aztecs knocked out the Aggies starting quarterback, Spencer Petras, with an arm injury. Prior to that, they had knocked out the Aggies' leading rusher, Rasul Faison, who was trying to get to 1,000 yards, went out of the game with 996 yards, didn't come back. And then they bring in their backup quarterback, Bryson Barnes, a transfer from Utah. The guy isn't known as a passer, he's known as a runner, and he absolutely crushed the Aztecs. Check these stats out, folks. He went 13 of 15 passing, 139 yards he threw for 3 touchdowns, and he had 15 carries for 193 yards. He had a 19-yard touchdown run. He also had a 63-yard run. They got tackled, deep into Aztec territory, inside the 20-yard line. But the penalties. Now, here's my big problem with the penalties. They've been a problem since the entire season. I mean, there was a point in the middle of the season where they cut down on them a little bit, but they've been a problem really most of the year. Against Utah State, they had 12 penalties. 12 penalties for 101 yards. On the season, in 11 games, with one game to go, they have 103 penalties for a total of 933 yards. This team is not good enough to overcome those penalty yards. And then they're averaging 9.36 penalties per game, almost in double figures per game in penalties, and an average of 84.81, almost 85 yards a game in penalties. You can't win that way, especially against good teams. Now, against bad teams that you can overwhelm, like Texas A&M Commerce, like they did, you overwhelm them, even though you had to play a really good second half because you were in trouble in the first half. But, a really interesting article in Sunday's Union Tribune by the man who covers the Aztecs, Kirk Kenney. I want to read some comments from Sean Lewis after the game. This was right after the game during the post-game interview with San Diego Sports 760. And in spite of the losing streak, the Aztecs are headed in the right direction, Coach Lewis said. Absolutely, Lewis said. We are doing great work here. It's going to continue to move in the right way. It takes time to build something at a championship level. It's really, really easy in society to tear something down. It takes a different group of individuals to build and create. We know that we've got the right people here that are, I want to continue this, doing that. We're going to continue to build. We're going to continue to create, and there's going to be championships that come home in the future to La Mesa. That I have no doubt about. That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear. Sean Lewis, I think, is a good coach, and I think he's a good guy. I've not met Coach Lewis, but I listened to him very carefully. I'm sure after one of those first games of the year, he wanted to know who the hell I was because I was down in there after one of their games early in the year and was asking questions. He had no idea who the hell I was. I'm sure he asked Jamie McConaughey, the sports information director, who's that big guy sitting in the front corner there asking me questions. But you know what? I care about Aztec football, and I think a lot of you out there care. I know a lot of you don't go to the games. I know there are a lot of empty seats. I think the pricing was way off when they opened the stadium. San Diego State's made a lot of mistakes when it comes to their football program. I think they've hired a very good coach. I think he's got a good resume, but I do think he's being asked to do too much. And I mentioned they don't really have an offensive coordinator. He is the offensive coordinator. I just think in this day and age, it's too much. I think it's too much. Now, if you had this program in place and you inherited a wealth of talent, I think you could probably do what he's trying to do right now. But there's so many things he has to do on the field, off the field, the NIL. And I was listening to my friends up in Los Angeles on the way to Snapdragon on Saturday night. I was listening to the USC talk show. Of course, they played UCLA, and I'm going to mention that game here in a minute. But they really brought up a very interesting point. And it's everything I've heard the last 2 weeks is about NIL. NIL this, NIL that. And that's where we're at. That's exactly where we're at right now. And they were talking about Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley signed a contract. When he left Oklahoma to take the job at USC, he got a $100 million contract. Obviously, that money to this point has not been very well spent. But they were talking about Lincoln Riley's not really one of these guys who wants to go out and talk to the boosters. I mean, he'll go to the booster functions and shake hands and that, but he's not one of these guys that lives and breathes wanting to go out there and shake hands. He probably wants to sit around and count his money when he's not coaching. And a guy like Sean Lewis, who I've heard nothing but great things about, he needs to be out pressing the flesh, talking to everybody he can talk to about trying to help this Aztec football program. And like I said, I think he's a good man. And I think he will do a good job, but right now it's brutal. It's tough to watch. It's really tough to watch, but I also think he's going to have to, I'm not saying fire anybody. I'm not a big believer in that. When you hire them, you believe in them because they know what they're doing. Now, if a guy's jaking it and not working hard enough, that's a whole different story. But if you hire a guy that has good knowledge and you believe and trust him, you got to work with him and put him in best position to have success, just like you do with players. You got to do that with coaches as well. But I think Sean Lewis right now might be trying to do too much. I don't know how he delegates authority. I'm not there. I don't know. But I'm looking at this day and age, folks, of where college football's at. I don't think he can be the offensive coordinator. I think he needs to hire somebody that he trusts, and that person may already be on staff. But you got to turn over the reins of the offense. Tell them, hey, this is the offense we're going to run. You bring somebody in that has a history with it, and you put it in and you run it and you oversee it. You got to be like a CEO. But I think he needs to branch out, coach his whole team, be a part of it, deal with players that are late for class, discipline problems, guys not working hard, bring them in, motivate them. There's a lot of pluses about this Sean Lewis. I really like this guy. I liked him when they hired him, and I realize now he's swimming upstream. He got a lot of things to deal with, and a lot of it wasn't his doing. It really wasn't. And I'm not trying to take him off the hook, but what I watched on Saturday was embarrassing. And for anybody that's an Aztec who maybe played for the Aztecs, had to be just shaking their head. It's not his fault, though. Next year at this time, they're 3-8. It's his fault. He got to get this thing turned around. But I think he's going to probably, in my opinion, I think he needs to rearrange his staff. And I'm not saying you take the wide receivers coach, make him the DB coach. If you have somebody on your staff right now, they've got, like I mentioned, a run game coordinator and they have a passing game coordinator. Is there one guy or either one of those guys, the guy you'd want to give the keys to your offense to, or do you need to go out and hire somebody? And it's not because Sean Lewis doesn't know how to run an offense. He does. But I think there are too many other things he needs to do as a head coach. The head coaching position is evolving right now. You know, you got a guy like Nick Saban, who was a control freak, and I'm a big fan of Nick Saban, but he had a great program. He had all the best players in the country, and he hired good coaches, and he had to rehire new coaches every year because his coaches would get, poached by other universities for better assistance job or head coaching jobs. But where Sean Lewis is at right now, he's got to build this program. And the only way you build it is by recruiting, and then you have to have retention. I mean, they're going to have to re-recruit a lot of their players. A lot of their good players are sitting around right now going, Christ, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? You have to convince those guys that they want to be here and that they can be a big part of the turnaround here at San Diego State. I listened to Marquez Cooper, and by the way, congratulations. He went over the 5,000-yard mark the other day in college football. That's tremendous. 23 guys have done that in the history of college football? He's done it at 3 different universities. Congratulations to him. I listened to him, and I listened to Trey White, the young man from down in the South Bay who's having a monster year. And they said, hey, the coaches are doing a good job. We're not doing the job. We're not getting it done. And they put the illness on themselves and their teammates, saying, we're not doing our job. We got to do our job. Guys are being told 3 and 4 times that, hey, you got to do it this way. You got to do it this way. Well, I'm a big believer in coaching. Once you tell the guy at least twice and he doesn't do it, he doesn't want to do it. And you know what you do in good programs? You sit their ass on the bench. That's how you deal with it. The best way to get ball players motivated is by sitting their ass on the bench. But they don't have that kind of depth right now. So, I mean, Sean Lewis is going to have to, when this game is over on Saturday night against Air Force, I don't know if they can beat Air Force. I mean, 4 weeks ago, I'd said, oh, man, they're gonna beat New Mexico. They're going to beat Utah State. They're going to beat Air Force. They're going to a bowl game. Not even close now. They got 3 wins. They can, with a win on Saturday, they can match what Brady Hoke had last year, 4-8. And, again, you got Danny O'Neal, who's a quarterback, and he's going through growing pain. Did a good job the other day, though. Didn't turn the ball over, no interceptions, no fumbles. But again, he's a freshman, and freshmen are going to make mistakes. Sophomores are going to make mistakes. But I'm praying that the Aztecs can get this thing turned around. I'm praying that Coach Lewis can get it turned around because I really like him. I think he's a good man. And I think he's a really good coach. I think he knows his stuff very, very well. He's obviously gone through it. He did a hell of a job coaching Kent State. In fact, the first bowl game they ever won was a team that Sean Lewis was the head coach of. And like the announcer said the other day in the Utah State-San Diego State game, if you can win at Kent State, you can win anywhere. San Diego State has a lot of positives, but I think Sean Lewis has come in. I think he's had to do too much. I think he needs to hire an offensive coordinator who he trusts and can work with. And of course, he's always going to oversee it. In critical situations, he's going to be the guy making the call on what we're doing on 4th and 1 or 4th and 2 or 4th and 5. Head coach always has the prerogative to call the play in that situation. But the man has to do too much. He needs to go out and talk to all the boosters. I mean, he needs to have 9 days in a week and about 30 hours a day because he's got a lot of work to do. But it was a pretty sad commentary on Saturday watching Utah State, who I don't think is a great team. The Aztecs made them look good, and they rolled 41 straight points and beat the Aztecs 41-20. Okay, a couple of other things I wanted to mention on college football. Brandon Moore, the second-year head coach out at USD. Congratulations. I think he's got the program turned around. You know, it was a very, very difficult task for him when he came in. Dale Lindsey was let go. Brandon Moore came in, and there were all kinds of things that were going on apparently within the athletic football program out there. And last year was a really tough year, on the field, off the field, but it looks like he's got this program turned in the right direction. They had a big win down in Kentucky against Morehead State, 37-14. They finished the year 8-3, 6-2 in the PFL, second place. He's a good football coach, and he's a good man. And I think he definitely has the Toreros going on the right track. They've got some work to do recruiting-wise, but I think Brandon Moore did a very nice job in his second year, and I'm expecting bigger and better things next year from the Torero football program. Okay, I got home after I went to the high school football game. I got home, and of course, that USC-UCLA game started at about 7:35. And I'm listening to my buddy Pete Arbogast, and then I was listening to my buddy Josh Lewin. I was going back and forth. Whenever they go to a commercial, I'd turn to one of those other guys. Both those guys are great guys, have been great contributors in my radio program over the years, and appreciate that. But USC, they came back, and they scored Jaden Maeva, the quarterback, 4-yard touchdown pass to Jacoby Lane, 6:55 left in the fourth to take the lead. And then Michael Lance added a 30-yard field goal with a little over 2 minutes to go. In fact, Lance hit 4 field goals in that game. And the Trojans edge UCLA at the Rose Bowl 19-13. USC becomes bowl eligible. And Deshaun Foster in his first year, who, by the way, I think has done a pretty good job. Chip Kelly bailed out to take the offensive coordinator's job at Ohio State. Congratulations, Ohio State, Ryan Day. They beat up on Indiana on Saturday. But Deshaun Foster, who probably wasn't the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth choice for the head coaching job, I think has done a pretty decent job in his first year. Bruins got 1 game to go. They'll play Saturday afternoon against Fresno State. I would think they could beat Fresno State. The Bruins right now 4-7. They finished 3-6 in the Big Ten. The Trojans with the win go to 6-5 and 4-5 in conference play. They got Notre Dame coming in at 12:30 on Saturday. Notre Dame obviously going to be a big favorite, but at the end of the day, who did the better job this year? Lincoln Riley or Deshaun Foster? I'd have to say Deshaun Foster because nothing was expected. A lot of people thought USC would, contend with Ohio State for the title. I never thought that, even though I'm a Southern California guy and I liked it. But nobody really expected UCLA to win more than a couple of games. And they've won 4 games. They got a chance to win 5. Both those programs have a lot of work to do, man. I'll tell you. I mean, USC. I mean, you talk about falling from the hierarchy, they're so far down now, you need a microscope to find them nationally. UCLA, they're going to have a hard time, I think, competing in the Big Ten unless something really changes drastically over the next couple of years. But it ended up being a pretty good game. Boy, if SC would have lost that game, oh my goodness gracious. But they came back and ended up winning it late. Okay, I want to get over to college basketball. As most of you know, I call the UCSD basketball games on ESPN Plus. I got a game on Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock. But Eric Olin is a really, really good young coach. And he did a great job a year ago. They won 21 games. It was their last year of so-called probation, making the change from Division II to Division I. You have 4 years where you can't play for a conference title. You can't go to the conference tournament. You can't go to the NCAA tournament or the NIT. They went to the CBI last year. They won 21 games last year in conference, and the Big West finished right behind UC Irvine. Russell Turner always has a great team at Irvine. UCSD last year went 15-5 in the Big West. They couldn't go to the postseason tournaments run by the NCAA, which is the big tournament, the NCAA tournament and the NIT, but they were able to go to the College Basketball Invitational. They got beat in the first round, but they went back to Daytona Beach this year, where they played a year ago, and they played 3 games in 3 days, and they won all 3 games. The first game, they defeated previously unbeaten LaSalle 72-67. Second game, Tritons took down James Madison, who's got a great basketball history, 73-67. And then in the third game, playing a very good Toledo team, the Tritons came out and just torched them. Now, I mean, they beat them by 35, 80-45. And Tyler McGuy, a senior, a tournament MVP, had 27 points. Aniwa Tate Jones, a player from New Zealand, who was the Big West newcomer of the year last year, he had 19 points. He was named to the all-tournament team. Tyler McGuy, a year ago, got eligible midway through the season. He actually was the sixth man of the year in the Big West. So a couple of guys that won postseason awards last year played big in this tournament down in Florida. And they won the Boardwalk Battle Championship, and they'll be back home on Saturday at 4 o'clock at Laverne, playing a lesser division. They should walk away with a win there. But Eric Holmes is a really good coach, and the Tritons right now off to a 5-2 start. Aztecs now. We're going to find out a little bit more about the Aztecs this week, folks. Aztecs 2-1 right now. They're going to be playing in the Players Era Festival over in Las Vegas. They play tomorrow, Tuesday, at 11 o'clock against Creighton. Aztecs have seen Creighton in the past. They know what Creighton's all about. The big test for the Aztecs tomorrow will be stopping a 7'1", 270-pound center, Ryan Kalkbrenner. Kalkbrenner earlier in the year, first game of the year, went for 49. He's averaging 21.4 and 9 rebounds a game. He's a shot blocker inside. And if you go back to that Gonzaga game a week ago, the big boys, namely Graham Ike, the former Wyoming Cowboy, they did a lot of damage to the young Aztec interior post players. So this will be an interesting game. Aztecs can hang with them guard-wise, but when it comes to the big guys down in the paint, Kalkbrenner is a horse. I thought Kalkbrenner would go to the NBA this year. I'm sure we'll probably see him in the NBA next year. But then, after Tuesday's game, Wednesday, the Aztecs have to play the University of Oregon. And then we'll see how they fare there, and then they'll get a third game, but we don't know who they would play right now. But they play on Tuesday, 11 a.m., early morning ball game for the Aztecs. It'll be a good test. They've had time off. They played a week ago tonight against Gonzaga, so they'll have 8 days to prepare for this game against Creighton and the University of Oregon. USD on Sunday got a much-needed victory. I'm going to tell you what, Steve Lavin, he had a good group of freshmen last year, but he lost almost all of them to NIL. They left Alcala Park. And he's having to rebuild again. His third year, they're 2-4. They won on Sunday against Idaho 68-61. Santiago Truitt, a career-high 18 points and 10 rebounds. They play on Wednesday at 7 o'clock against Marian University out of Wisconsin. You would think Marian University. I had to look them up. I had to look them up to find out where they're from. And if I have to look them up, that means that Torero should be able to beat him on Wednesday night. Okay, if I don't know about him, probably not too many people on the West Coast know about him. Okay, we're going to get over a little Padre news, folks. It's been few and far between with the Padres. Not a lot. What I will tell you, and I know it came down on Friday, but we did our show early Friday, and this came down later. Padres agreed to a one-year deal with utility man Tyler Wade. That includes a team option for 2026. Tyler Wade going to give you, going to hit 230, 240. He can steal bases, left-hand bat, can play all the different infield spots, can play the outfield. Nice. You get 900,000. It's fine. A nice bench piece. He's not a guy that's going to start more than, 5, 6, 7 games unless there's an injury. Going to come in late, maybe for defense here and there, or run and stay in the game. But, again, you got to have a strong bench. I'm a big proponent of that. Also, on Friday, Padres did not tender contracts to 4 players. Right-hander Logan Gillespie, right-hander Luis Patino, who's coming back from Tommy John. Outfielder Bryce Johnson, who, gave you a little defense, not much of a bat last year when he came up. And shortstop Mason McCoy, who did a nice job in his short time with the Padres, filling in when Hassan Kim went down. All 4 of those players now become free agents. Padres have 6 players up for arbitration. And 3 of them will be interesting. And they are Luis Arraez. What kind of raise is Luis Arraez going to get considering he won his 3rd batting title in 3 years with 3 different organizations? Dylan Cease, final year of arbitration. Michael King, final year of arbitration. And so is Arraez. All 3 of those guys, their final year of arbitration at the end of the 2025 season. All 3 of those guys become unrestricted free agents. Who will the Padres re-sign in that group? Will they re-sign any of them? I don't know. I mean, the big thing with Arraez, is he going to be your DH? Or do you think you can make him into a first baseman and then you got a spot at first base that doesn't have a lot of power? You got Cronenworth still under a long-term contract until 2030. What are we doing at shortstop? We're kind of playing musical positions right now. I mean, the easy thing for this year, if you believe in Bogarts that can go back to shortstop, you put him there, you move Cronenworth to second, and Arraez becomes your everyday first baseman. And then, you're just having to pay Arraez a little more money because of arbitration. So you save money there. Maybe the money you save there, you can re-sign Profar. I'm still not big on giving Profar a 3-year deal at $12 to $16 million a year. I think you're insane if you do that. I think that's a bad business move. I don't think he's ever going to hit 280 again. I don't know if he'll ever hit 24 homers again. He's a 245 career hitter, had a career year. At 32 years of age, you want to roll the dice on that? I don't. Padres have backed themselves into a pretty good corner. Now, there's some other players that are arbitration eligible for multiple years. You got right-hander Jason Adam, who I think the Padres really like. They got him on multiple years. Left-hander Adrian Morejon and catcher Luis Camposano. Where does Camposano come into play in 2025? He finished the year in AAA. He had the starting job, and you lost it. Lost it to a journeyman like Kyle Higashioka, who had a career-high 17 home runs. I haven't exactly heard a lot of people talking about Higashioka out on the free agent market. I think the Padres may be able to get him back. I mean, once upon a time, there was a story like 3 weeks ago that Higashioka was in line for a 2-year, $15 million deal. He made under $3 million this last year. I think he made like 2.4, 2.5 million. Not going to give him a $5 million raise. Are you kidding me? At 35 years of age, that'd be ludicrous. I'd give him, maybe a bump to 3, maybe 3.2, something like that. Give him a 2-year contract for $7 million. I'm not giving him a 2-year deal at $15 million. I don't think anybody will. At 35 years of age, is he going to hit 17 home runs again? And he's a guy that I like. I was probably the only guy in San Diego that was happy about Kyle Higashioka coming to the Padres as part of that Soto deal. Everybody else was talking about the pitchers, and deservedly so. But I actually get kind of fired up about having a good, solid backup catcher, and he did a nice job. There's some balls that probably shouldn't have got by him, but they did. And, he is what he is. But he's a guy that I think can help you win some ball games along the way, but I'm not going to overpay for him. Just not going to do that. So that's pretty much the Padre update right now. Not a lot going on in free agency. Let's jump over to the National Football League. Tonight, the 7-3 Chargers are taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore Ravens are coming out west with a very bitter taste in their mouth. And the reason for that is they got beat last week 18-16 by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers did not score a touchdown. Chris Boswell hit 6 field goals to beat them. 18-16. So Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, that big offensive line, that physical defense are going to come to SoFi Stadium tonight at 5:15 and take on the Chargers. Chargers against 7-3. To this point, they've beaten only one team with a winning record, and that's the Denver Broncos. We're going to find out a little bit more about this great turnaround with Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. Like I mentioned, they've only beaten one team with a winning record this year. This, to me, is a real test for the Chargers. How good are they? We're going to find out tonight. Now, when I come back on the podcast on Wednesday, I may have to eat my words. I don't think they can beat Baltimore. How do you feel about that? I think Justin Herbert, they've taken the handcuffs off of him. He's getting to show what he's all about. I think that receiving core has gotten better, but they're going to be going against a tough, hard-nosed, physical defense. And those defensive backs from Baltimore, they're tough, man. They'll lay the wood to you. It's going to be an interesting game, and this is a real gut check for the LA Chargers. We're going to find out just how good they are. Are they contenders or are they pretenders? We'll find out tonight, starting at 5:15. Monday Night Football. All right. Now, let's talk about the Rams for just a minute. Rams, I think, overall have done a good job. They're 5-6. So are the 49ers. 49ers look terrible. They got beat up, 38-10 by Green Bay. They had to go with Brandon Allen at quarterback. They got all kinds of problems. They got all kinds of guys hurt, but a disappointing year for John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and the 49ers. But the Rams are right in there. The Seahawks in Arizona, they're the team to beat right now in the NFC West. But the Rams, they had an opportunity last night to take down the Eagles. Couldn't get it done. Saquon Barkley set a franchise record. He ran for 255 yards and 2 touchdowns on 26 carries. 255 yards. He had touchdown runs of 70 and 72 yards. This is the NFL, folks. You're not running against, a bunch of potato heads. A 70-yard jaunt and a 72-yard jaunt for touchdowns. Pretty incredible. He had 302 total yards from scrimmage last night with 4 catches, 47 yards. Jalen Hurts, one of my favorite players in the league. He's a winner. 15 of 22, 179 yards through the air, a touchdown, and 12 carries for 39 yards. A.J. Brown had a big game, 6 catches, a touchdown. Eagles are for real, man. Eagles can flat out play. They've won 7 games. They're now 9-2. Rams go to 5-6. The Rams are hanging in there. But I'm looking forward to the game tonight. Derrick Henry is my favorite player. Jalen Hurts is one of my favorite players, but Derrick Henry has been one of my favorite players since he left Alabama. Big Derrick Henry fan. And already got 10,000 career rushing yards. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame someday. That's pretty good. All right. Want to remind everyone, and if we have anybody out there, we got some questions or anything, we'll get to those. Please subscribe to the channel, folks. Always appreciate that. And again, you can follow me on Facebook at John Quintera and on X at Coach Quintera 44. And again, we're going to keep you up to date on everything. We're going to be back in on Wednesday morning at 9:30, and then we're going to take the day after Thanksgiving off. I'm going to go to that big Rady Children's Invitational basketball tournament. Purdue's coming, and some of the big boys in college basketball. I want to go down and watch at Lion Tree Arena, a big doubleheader on Friday at 12:30 and 3 o'clock, and then I'm calling that UCSD game at 4 o'clock on Saturday. So I'm looking forward to a big weekend of college basketball. But again, we'll be back in on Wednesday. And again, please, if you have any comments, please write them in at the bottom of our page on our YouTube page, or you can also hit me up on Facebook and on X. Until Wednesday, Coach John Quintera, have a great start to your week and enjoy the Monday Night Football game. Talk to you Wednesday at 9:30. Bye-bye.